Hormones are a hell of a drug. I'll tell you that right now. Hormones are a hell of a drug. And hormones can make you feel wonderful about yourself as well. They can make you feel comfortable in your own skin for the first time in more than 4 decades. That's what hormones can do. Hormones can bring out that inner self and allow you to be you and express that to the world. Hello, and thank you for tuning in. It's Brandi's World. Okay, in today's episode, we are continuing our look at the podcast Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle. This podcast is brought to us by The Christian Post and hosted by Brandon Showalter. In the first episode, go back and check that one out. Brandon Showalter interviews some parents of transgender children. This second episode that we are looking at, the first part of the second episode, he interviews a couple of medical outliers or some doctors who are not in the consensus with the medical field. We are going to continue now. Let's see what else they have to say in the trans battle. Actually, episode 2 has a subtitle. It's called Doctors Unveil Trans Scandal Inside Clinics and Medical Institutions. Families are being torn apart. Okay, let's hear about these families being torn apart inside this scandal. Ooh, scandalous. Scandalous people trying to get medical treatments.
Filmmaker and bioethicist Jennifer Law.
Okay, Jennifer Law.
So Jennifer, when we consider biomedical ethics in this space, medical practices and procedures that would have been considered unthinkable just a short time ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
Unthinkable? What are you talking about? Medical practices for treating gender dysphoria has been around for quite a while. And the field is expanding because our society is recognizing gender dysphoria as an affliction. It's not like, hey, here's a new trend that you can start. No, it's, we recognize that this is an affliction affecting a lot of people. And there are treatments for it. And here are the treatments. So, a medical treatment becoming more widely used is a recognition that the medical community is recognizing treatments to treat afflictions or disorders. This is a good thing.
50 years ago, perhaps they were recurring sparsely, but now it's just, you see it everywhere, and it's astonishing to look at this. And so, from your experience as one who knows the bioethics world, where do you think the first, breakdown in ethical standards started in a contemporary sense?
Well, that's a very big question. And,
That is a very loaded question. It's not a very big question. It's very loaded. So it's like, when did you stop beating your wife? You already have your conclusion, dude. It's not the way you approach a subject. Come on.
Of course, my point of view, for your listeners' benefit, I worked in hospital clinical nursing for some 20 years. So I would say 25, 30 years ago, we did see shifts away from, I give the example often that as a nurse, we had patients, we had physicians, and then by the time I left nursing, we had clients and customers. We moved from what was used to be seen negatively as the paternalistic model of medicine, the doctor knows best. Question the doctor, you do whatever the doctor tells you because he's the expert, to, by the time I left.
I'm glad all their doctors are just he's. They're all male doctors. You will not be a female doctor here, because... Okay, man, I'm just reading into that a little bit, but notice the loaded language they continue to use. Automatically, a doctor's a man, of course, And this practice of medicine that we don't understand is bad, of course, already. Come on, people.
Clinical nursing, people would walk in, they had done their Google search, and they would say, "Doctor, I think I have X, Y, and Z, and I'd like you to order, CAT scans and these kind of lab tests." And doctors would just comply because this shift in medicine from recognizing that doctors have expertise. I mean, they in fact went to medical school, to that their role was just to provide services to whatever their customer demanded. And so I think that,
you know what, there's a hint of truth to what she's saying, and I think that goes on a broader spectrum of it's not coming from the patients necessarily. The patients are being fed and funneled information about medical treatments through their media outlets. Think about it. Here in the United States, turn on a television or watch any kind of advertisement for a while, the ads coming on, you're going to get medical advice in those ads. You're going to see medicine that I have no idea, you have no idea how it works, what's in it, or what it's for, but they're going to show you a cute little commercial in a field with flowers and butterflies and some guy skipping along going, "Ooh, Opetex," or whatever the medicine is, did wonders for my life. Go ask your doctor about medicine X because a commercial told you to ask about medicine X. That it's not... Society's not saying, "Doctors, you no longer know what you're doing. These patients know better." No, it's the patients are being fed a ton of information before they even see the doctor. They don't know what that medicine is about, but they're convinced it should work because they saw it on a commercial. Or they're convinced a medicine doesn't work because they heard it on a podcast. People need to have discussions with the experts. The doctors are the experts in the medical field. You don't go in there predetermine what your doctor should do for you. You say, "Doctor, here's what I'm experiencing. Here's what I've heard about these experiences. What are your thoughts?" That's what should be happening. But I agree, yes, there's going to be patients who demand doctors do a service for them. And that is being fed through our media outlets. Not because we do not put value in the expertise of doctors. It's because people are emboldened to think that they know better than their doctors. And that's silly.
Was a breakdown. And at that time we shifted from what used to be medical ethics to bioethics, which is sort of ethics by committee. So we moved from now, we have, policy makers telling medical doctors how to practice. We have lawyers, impacting medical practice, oftentimes through just litigation and lawsuits. We have pharmaceutical companies, weighing in and lobbying with their big pharma money with what they think medicine should do and how physicians ought to operate. So I think in that kind of milieu and landscape, those sort of titanic shifts landed us to where we are today, where I hear from medical students all the time that they have very little ethics training. They're just being skilled in being technicians without even saying, "Should I be doing this? Is this what I ought to be doing?" The few physicians that are still sort of standing and sort of holding back the tides, if you will, are really taking hits. They're being ostracized. They're being threatened to lose insurance coverage. Insurance providers aren't going to work with them. The hospitals aren't going to give them privileges if they don't perform certain ways and certain procedures.
All right, so far I can't really argue with this lady on these points, but I'm sure she's going to turn. I predict that she's going to say that the people are trying to keep the ethics up. The ethic levels at a high level are the gatekeepers that she's talking about, and they're going to say, "Don't give medical treatment to these people X." Even though group X with medicine Y have good results and it works very well, they're going to say ethically we shouldn't do that because of different reasons.
Along the way, Jennifer Lahl stressed that these shifts impacted the core beliefs at the center of medical ethics, shifting doctors' approaches away from individual needs and toward patients' various whims.
When you look at the foundational beliefs that should be behind good, ethical, proper, what I call ethical and proper medicine, Hippocratic kind of medicine, is what is the ethical framework that's at play. And today, the ethical framework that's at play is often utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number, instead of looking at each patient as an individual and what does this particular patient need, which might be different than, a utilitarian kind of argument that we're going to practice medicine so that we can deliver care, to the maximum amount of people. When I was in graduate school, there was what we called the Georgetown mantra, which was, beneficence, non-maleficence. Beneficence, do good. Non-maleficence, don't do bad. Autonomy, the patient is an autonomous individual that should have a voice in what we do to them or don't do to them. And justice. Well,
wow, I agree with all of that. She's making so much sense. And yes, she says you should have autonomy of your body. That's pretty key. I like that. And she's also saying that don't do harm, do good. Yes. Yes. We're going to come back to this information she's given us.
Each 4 points of those, we can't even agree on what is justice. What is do no harm? In the trans lobby, do no harm on one camp is we have to affirm gender transition in minors.
Yes. Do no harm, because think about what is the converse to that. What if you do not affirm a child's identity? You then force them to express and perform an identity that is not within them. You are asking them and forcing them to try to be something they're not. And that could be very harmful. If you're not allowed to express who you are, that could have some psychological harm. Yes, absolutely.
Or we're harming them. And then the other side, we're like, no, that is harmful to do to minors, to chop off healthy breast tissue.
Yes, to chop at children is not good. I agree. But you see how they're attacking surgeries which don't happen to minor children? At least not under 16. There are children getting surgeries under 16 that can wait till they're 18. Yeah, you know what? I agree. Don't have those surgeries for young children that are unnecessary. Yes. Don't conflate unnecessary surgeries with necessary medical treatments. And don't deny necessary medical treatments because you don't like unnecessary surgeries. Are we clear on that?
Or to sterilize children. So we can't even agree on the language anymore. So we don't have a shared common ethical framework like we did 50 years ago when, like I said in my first things piece, medical doctors would just say, well, no, we're not going to do that. That's not what's indicated here. That's not what this patient needs. It's not for the good of this patient. So when we don't have a shared value system or shared meaning to the words that we use, like justice and autonomy.
Justice and autonomy. What is she trying to say? She's conflating her position with everyone's position, and if everyone's position is not aligned with her position, then automatically it's not just? I think you're misusing the word justice there, lady.
I had the chance to ask Dr. Van Mol about some of the dangers surrounding fast-tracking kids into medicalization in this transgender craze. Dr. Van Mol, could you explain what are the worst risks when a child is fast-tracked on this pathway? What are the worst things that can happen if he or she goes on blockers or cross-sex hormones and then maybe even goes on to a cosmetic gender surgery?
Well, you asked about the worst-case scenario, and that's death by
Yes, death. Death is the worst case in all medical treatments. Agreed. And, okay. Just heard it. It's going to be a trigger warning right now because he's about to say death by suicide. So, trigger warning coming up. Apparently, we're going to hear about teenage transgender suicide. And here we go.
Side. And again, transition affirmation, gender affirming therapy is not proven to improve mental health or to reduce suicide. And the best studies have...
It is not? You think... You're not getting why the children are at such a high risk of suicide. What is different? What is the difference between that group of children and other group of children? Why this group of children, of transgender children, are at a risk of suicide death much greater than the other groups? What is the difference? Exactly what this podcast is trying to do is the difference. Is people are trying to deny those children expression of who they are. That is what's killing them. They cannot express or be who they are. They are not getting acceptance for who they are. Is what is the catalyst that is causing the death in so many transgender children. And to say because there's been a couple of studies out there, and I haven't looked at these studies. Who knows how legit these studies are? I'm going to have to look into these studies now, because that can't possibly be right to say that denying a child to express themselves is healthier for them psychologically. How?
Worst results. But this study out of Sweden, from around 2011 or so, that looked at all sex reassignment surgery patients in Sweden over 30 years. If you follow them out 10 years, not 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, the honeymoon period that most studies tend to stop in, but you follow them 10 years or more, they have a completed suicide rate 19 times that of the general population, 3 times the all-cause mortality, meaning all the things that can kill someone, and about 3 times the rate of psychiatric hospitalization.
Why is that? Why is, even though transgender people are getting the medical treatments that they need to express themselves, they are still at a high risk of suicide? Let's think about that. It's not only medical treatments that you need. You also need social expression and social acceptance. That's what triggers suicide. It's not medical. Like everything else in my life is totally great, but my bum knee, I just can't get over it and I'm going to kill myself. It's not the way anything works. Suicide is pressure to die of suicide is coming from outside forces onto transgender children. People telling them that even though that they're expressing who they are, they shouldn't express it, and they shouldn't express it to other people. And they should carry guilt and shame for expressing who they are. Because these people don't want other people to come up and express who they are. You're supposed to live an existence of social acceptance and social extinction at the same time as a trans person. Society wants to pretend we don't exist. They want to convince themselves that we shouldn't exist. Going so far to manipulate results of studies about suicide in children to twist it to make their archaic point of denying children the right to medical treatments. It's becoming obscene, people.
There. And in 2019, a different electronic medical review of the entire nation of Sweden, Brandstrom and Pachankas, ultimately showed that both gender-affirming hormones and gender-affirming surgery did nothing to improve the psychological endpoints that they looked at. So here are 2 of the best studies of their kind showing it didn't change much. And there's all kinds of sub-studies that can bring up stuff out of Denver.
How much did the society change around that person as they changed? Probably didn't adjust to them either. So it's not easy. All of my surgeries, oh my God, they work great for me. But if I go out there carrying the big transgender label over my head, guess what's going to happen to me out in society? I am going to be oppressed and beat up on, physically and mentally. It will happen. Society is the key to stifling and shutting down this trend of suicide, this rage that is coming from society that is causing these high suicide rates. That is where we need to nip things in the butt. We don't need to stop treating people because a portion of society is not accepting them as who they are. Therefore, we shouldn't allow access for those people to express that. That's your solution. Your solution is to deny treatments because you don't see that everything comes up rosy and sunshines after a few years of society trying to accept trans people. And believe me, there's a lot of people that are more than welcoming to accept trans people as part of us, as our society, as us. Most people are decent, kind people who recognize humans as humans and recognize that we should all be on a level playing field.
And other places showing it didn't really help much, and it didn't help no matter how supportive the general population was. If you're looking for suicide reduction, this isn't it. The package insert of, for example...
Yes, it is it, but it doesn't go far enough. The medical treatments to stifle suicide rates help, but it also need the social help in there too. We need our societies to recognize us as humans and citizens. That's what we need. When we truly have quality and normality within society, suicide rates are going to be flatlined for the transgender people. Until that imbalance in our society position, in our stance, in the casting out of us stops occurring, maybe when those things happen, we will be able to just wash away with the suicide of transgender people. When we're able to be us fully in society, that is when the suicide rates will equal out. They're not equal because we're not equal in society. Get it?
Lupron, the main puberty blocker used in the United States, has specific warning in there about the risk of depression, self-harmful behavior, a low rate of suicide attempts. Well, really, this is something I'd put someone on who's threatening to kill themselves if they're not a...
Come on, you're not being completely honest there, are you, doctor? How many other medicines that are put on all children experiencing depression, anxiety, have those similar risks? Are there medicines out there that you personally would give to children that have those risks as a side effect, however small or big they might be? Because you're not saying how small and big those risks might be, are you? And you're not mentioning that most medicine to treat psychological and other inflictions on children, things occurring to them in their brain parts. When we try to treat the brain part of our body, we're also going to be at risk of death no matter what those medicines are. There are small risks of death of most medicines. So don't just single out this medicine, because it's not unique from other medicines, is it? And it's not just for trans children. Keep that in mind. These hormone blockers are there to treat all the children, not just the trans children. The first time I ever heard of hormone blockers, I was a young kid, way before I knew anything about transgender anything. I was a young kid and my elder cousin was going through an accelerated puberty at a very young age. He was like 10, I think, and he started to experiencing signs of beginnings of puberty. So guess what they did? The family sat down with the doctor and they had discussions and they talked about putting the child on a hormone blocker. And you know what? The first conversation that came up when they talked about that, I guarantee it wasn't the suicide rates now that child is going to face because of that medicine. They are there to prevent unwanted puberties for children who are not ready to go through that puberty, or not wanting to go through that puberty, or not able to go through that puberty at the time and stage of their life that they are. That's what hormone blockers do. They work. That's why we use them.
Puberty blockers, that doesn't sound right. The more immediate physiologic problems is it impairs fertility, and if you're on it long enough, it's the end of your fertility because the sperm and egg never have a chance to develop. Certainly, if you follow puberty blockers with cross-sex hormones, you're sterile, and that is on the gender clinic site of UC San Francisco. It is in the consent documents that Children's Hospital LA has children and parents sign. They're going to be part of their program. So a lot harder for the other.
Yeah, hormone replacement therapies can mess with your reproductive system. That is true. One of the reasons I don't think hormones should be given to children under 16. Right? When I went through my hormone replacement therapy, my sexual reproduction was not there anyway. There are other surgeries. I had a surgery so I did not reproduce anymore way before that, not as a trans person, as my living up to my assignments. I did that back when I was in my 20s. I was in my 20s and I was snipped. Yeah, but I made that choice in my 20s. I agree, not in your teens. Don't make that choice in your teens. And I don't know a percentage of people who do hormone replacement therapies who are sterile, as they put it. And even if you are, that does not stop you from having a family and having children. Think about it. Adoption. How many children need loving homes? You don't need to have sexual reproduction to be a loving and great parent and have a wonderful family. You don't need to do that. You don't need to mix your sperm and egg to have a family. Right? I'm sure you're going to agree with me on that. You don't need it. But it could be very important to some people. And sure, make that decision as an adult, not as a child. Agreed. But allow the adults to do it, and allow the children to get the treatments that they can go through as children to help them ease the gender dysphoria that they are experiencing. We can do this, people. We're close to agreement on certain things. We got this.
Decide to deny or just say we're making up. So there's the infertility problem. There's the sexual dysfunction that comes with it.
Yeah, no, not really. I could. Hormones are a hell of a drug. I'll tell you that right now. Hormones are a hell of a drug. And they can shift and adapt and change your sexual appetite. For sure. They can shift your sexual appetite. They can shift your sexual orientation, even on rare occasions. That doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. Hormones can shift lots of things about you and your body. This is true. And hormones can make you feel wonderful about yourself as well. They can make you feel comfortable in your own skin for the first time in more than 4 decades. That's what hormones can do. Hormones can bring out that inner self and allow you to be you and express that to the world. Hormones are wonderful, but they're also a very powerful drug. Hormones after childhood. you can stop an unwanted or slow down an unwanted puberty or unwanted hormone flush into your body, that is a good thing. Putting hormones into your body is a different thing than suppressing the hormones your body is trying to flood your system with. Those are different things. Keep that in mind. Hormone blockers. Yay! Not just for trans children, but for all children who are facing or about to go through a puberty that is unwanted for them. When you're adult, make adult decisions about your hormones. If your inner self is like me, take me for an example, just an anecdotal story of me. When I discovered my inner identity, one of the best things to help me express that were hormones. Hormones work so well. Estrogen, my body on estrogen is so much more me. I am more me with estrogen. That needs to be an adult decision. Because like this doctor says, you're not completely wrong on all this stuff. There are going to be huge side effects with hormone replacement therapy. For sure. And what you get with it, oh my goodness, it is amazing treatment. Hormone replacement therapy, laser hair removal, and facial feminization. Those three things stomped out my gender dysphoria like no other treatment ever could or has. Those three things did wonders for me. After my breast augmentation helped out a little bit, but not as much. Not as much as my hormone replacement therapy, my laser hair removal, those two things, and facial feminization. Oh my goodness, those things. But facial feminization can be avoided with hormone blockers. If you use hormone blockers before a child goes through an unwanted puberty, and if that child was assigned box A at birth and they are expressing and fit nicely into box B, if you block that unwanted testosterone going into their system, it will benefit them. They will not have to go through later life unnecessary surgeries. You can prevent surgeries by using hormone blockers. It is that simple. It really will work. I wish I didn't have to go through facial feminization surgery. I had to do 5-6 surgeries so far. 3 of them were great. 3 of them was because I got a bacterial infection, because there are risks in surgeries. I got a bacterial infection and I had to have part of my face removed. That is not good. I was close to dying because I had an infection right here in my face, so close to my brain. It was there for years. It was hard to treat. I wish I didn't have to go through any of that. And if I was a child and I had discovered my gender identity and I had a support system around me that allowed me to stop the testosterone that was flooding my body as a teenager, that shaped my face in a way that I had to go through all those surgeries later to pull out me from, I wish I could have avoided this surgery. Can be avoided. So, yeah. Let's see what else they have to say.
Bone building, increase in bone mineral density in puberty is its zenith for life. So if you flatten that, now is this kid going to have osteopenia or even osteoporosis at remarkably young years? Where are the studies, showing safety on that? It affects psychology, obviously people going through that puberty window with their peers, and you block that, you can never have that time window back and all that comes with it.
Okay. He's like, you gotta let the children experience the puberty with their peers. because they have that great bond. Because you know how fun puberty was as a child. You have these hormones rushing through. You don't understand them. You have these sex drives you don't quite get. And you don't know how to use your body. But your body's saying, let's go out there and do stuff with this body. For me, puberty was an awful experience when I was 16 years old going through it. But guess what? When I was in my 40s and I began my hormone replacement therapy, I went through a second puberty. And you know what is fun? Going through that rush of hormones into your body and your body wanting to do things with it and you not being a little child. Oh my God, going through puberty as a full developed adult, psychologically and mentally and all that developed. So I understood what was going on with my body. I understood these cravings I was getting, and I had so much fun. Oh my goodness. It was a couple of years of puberty can be a lot of fun if you do it in your 40s. And you're single, and and you're a student like I was. I was a student in college. I was in my 40s, a student in college, not working, and I was going through a puberty. It was fun. Yes. Puberty at teenage stuff, it's not so great. You don't need to experience that with the rest of your kids, especially if it's one that's not going to make you feel comfortable. I felt so uncomfortable when I was going through a puberty in my teens. I didn't know why. I didn't understand why. I didn't know to question my gender identity. I didn't know to question the label I was assigned. I just tried to live up to that label. And the puberty did not feel good. It did not. The anxiety I got going through puberty. I wish I would have recognized what was happening at the time. And I wish I would have known information about how I could have stopped or slowed that down. And but that's not reality. I don't live in that timeline. I live in this timeline where I found and discovered my gender identity in my 40s. And I went through a puberty I didn't want to. But then I got to go through a puberty that felt amazing for my body. It shaped my body to make me feel more me. And that was beautiful. But you want children to go through a puberty that's unwanted for them. And just to like it. And then as a tease, you're like, oh yeah, when you get a little older, you can make those decisions. And guess what? They're going to make the decisions to go through a hormone replacement therapy, and then they're going to experience the puberty that they wanted. But guess what else they're going to have to do? Now they're going to have to try to treat the morphing of their face, the morphing of their bodies that happened with the first puberty that they didn't want to or need to go through. We can prevent unwanted and unnecessary surgeries and puberties. That is a good thing, people. It is not a bad thing. The vast majority of transgender people who get treatment do not regret the treatment they got. Okay, we're going to wrap it up for today. But on our next episode, we're going to continue our adventure. In our next episode, we're going to get into this anecdotal story of this person who detransitions. Love yourself, but more importantly, like yourself and treat people the way they want to be treated. Bye-bye for now.